3 years. I lived for 3 years branded as a thief. 3 years of being thrown out of my home by my own family, my parents and sister, all because of Qley's engagement ring. They didn't need proof. All they needed was an accusation, and I became the discarded one. That feeling, it was the most horrific betrayal, a deep incision into my trust. I lost everything, my family, my honor, and my faith in people. But then, in a bitter and ironic twist of fate, the ring was found, cold and forgotten, deep inside the garbage disposal. My parents called, crying, begging for forgiveness, wanting me to come back. But it was too late. 3 years of solitude had taught me the value of independence. I responded by cutting them off permanently and decided they must live with the consequences of their blindness. This is the detailed story of how I, Alex, broke free from the chains of a toxic family and claimed my life for myself. I am Alex, 26, raised in a small Ohio town, in a family that should have been a safe haven, but which was, in reality, divided into 2 poles, Qley and everyone else. My older sister, Qley, 29, was always the bright light. She was the leader, the high achiever, the prize my parents, Robert and Sarah, loved to show off. I, on the other hand, was the introvert, just an average student, content with being in the background. Gradually, this difference was no longer just personality. It became an unchangeable rank in the family hierarchy. When Qley went to a prestigious university, my parents' admiration for her turned into sheer adoration. I, who attended the local community college, felt like a failed project, a silent burden. My low self-esteem was nurtured by the very people who were supposed to support me. This favoritism was a series of small details, accumulating into a huge pain, eroding my self-worth over the years. I still remember my 10th birthday, when my parents forgot to buy a cake, forgot completely, because they were too busy preparing for Qley's debate tournament. When Qley returned, all the attention, all the comforting words were focused on her. I sat alone in the kitchen, looking at the stale supermarket cake, a feeling of bitterness washing over me. I told myself, Alex, what you want doesn't matter. What Qley wants is what matters. That was the first time I truly felt I was not equal in value, a cold, hard truth I had to accept. When I was 14, I sweated through an entire summer working to buy a mountain bike. It wasn't just a bike. It was my achievement. When Qley wanted one, my parents immediately bought her a much more expensive one. When I protested, my dad said, his tone resolute, Alex, you need to learn to share. I stayed silent, but felt the injustice as a crushing weight on my shoulders. They didn't teach Qley about waiting. They taught me about forced sacrifice. My anger didn't explode. It quietly retreated inward, transforming into a layer of vigilance, an invisible wall I built to protect myself. Even when I was 21 and needed a small loan for an online course, they refused, saying I lacked financial responsibility, while readily paying off Qley's heavily maxed-out credit card bill. This favoritism was a clear financial investment in Qley. The final incident before the storm was at Qley's engagement party. She, with the glittering diamond ring on her hand, publicly humiliated me. Are you still working at that grocery store? How pathetic. I saw the raw contempt in her eyes. My chest tightened, feeling like a hammer blow to my fragile self-confidence. I could only stand there and endure it. The incident happened a month after the engagement party. I was still living at home, working part-time. It was a Tuesday, my day off. I was playing a video game in my room. Everything was quiet, a quiet that, in retrospect, felt terrifying. I heard Mom and Qley laughing downstairs. I didn't pay any attention, focused solely on my game. I felt safe in my lonely shell. I had no idea that safety was about to be torn apart, and my life irrevocably shattered. Suddenly, a piercing scream ripped through the silence. It wasn't a scream of fear, but a scream full of fury and accusation. I rushed downstairs. Qley stood at the kitchen counter, pointing straight at me, her face flushed crimson. You took my ring! You are a thief! All the blood in my body seemed to freeze. My heart hammered wildly. I stammered a denial, but Qley wasn't listening. She insisted the ring had disappeared from the kitchen counter, and I was the only one home. Qley began to wail, her words like needles stabbing my last vestiges of self-respect. "You've always been jealous. You're a failure. You sold it for money. To do something meaningful with your life." This accusation wasn't just about the ring. It was an indictment of my entire life. A sentence on my worthlessness. My parents came home amidst the chaos. I looked at them, my eyes pleading. I craved fairness. I craved their trust. But my dad, Robert, only looked at me with cold disappointment. My mom, Sarah, wept. They believed Qley instantly, unconditionally. They believed Qley completely. They began searching my room. That was the moment respect was utterly shredded. I stood there, helpless, watching them overturn everything. They found the money I had been saving from the grocery store job. Qley snatched it, her voice triumphant. "There it is! The money from selling the ring." I screamed in despair. "That's my tuition money! You know that." No one listened. My mother turned her face away. My father said, his voice low and cold, "This disappointment, Alex, is the biggest thing you've ever given us." I collapsed internally. I realized I was no longer their son. I was a problem to be solved, an obstacle. That loneliness was more terrifying than being called a thief. I was evicted from my own family, judged and condemned without a trial. After a week of being tormented by suspicion, my dad came in and said, "You need to leave." They gave me 2 days to vanish. I didn't cry while packing. I felt a numbness, but beneath it was a burning rage. I couldn't leave in silence. I wrote a letter not to beg, but to declare. You chose to believe Qley over the truth about your son. This choice will haunt you. I challenge them. I am not a thief. And when the truth is known, I hope you can live with the choice you made today. I placed the letter on the bed and walked out the door. I took a deep breath. Behind me was betrayal. Ahead was uncertainty, but also absolute freedom. I had cut the cord of that toxic bond, and that was my first act of self-rescue. The first 2 months were a pure struggle for survival. Sleeping on Ryan's couch doing odd jobs. I took every job possible, from washing dishes to construction work. Every drop of sweat was proof of my independence, proving I was not a failure. Anger and the need to prove myself were my sole fuel. I found a stable job in a warehouse. The hours were long, but it brought self-sufficiency. I rented a small, run-down room, but it was my own territory, where no one could search. I cut off all communication. I learned that unconditional love was a myth. 3 years later, I was promoted to shift supervisor and studied online. I was no longer the fading Alex. I was a strong, mature man who had rebuilt his life from the ground up. Last week, an email from my dad arrived. "We need to talk." I hesitated. For a long time. My hands trembled as I picked up the phone, but I called him back. My dad's voice was shaky, full of guilt. "Alex, the ring. It's been found." He explained that Qley had accidentally dropped it into the garbage disposal. It had been stuck there, forgotten for 3 years. I felt an electric shock, then a furious wave of relief. Vindication. But immediately the cold anger returned. My 3 years of isolation. Who would give them back? My dad said they regretted it. They wanted to fix things. I hung up hollow inside. They wanted me to come home. They wanted me to return as the old, vulnerable Alex. But I was no longer that person. I decided to meet them. Not for forgiveness, but to close the door. They walked into the coffee shop, and I saw the devastation on their faces. My mother looked older, my father exhausted. Qley, stripped of her arrogance, was left only with remorse. They apologized nonstop. I listened, but I felt nothing. When my mother tried to hug me, I stepped back. I saw the heartbreak shatter across her face, but I had to do it. This was the line I would not allow them to cross. I said, "An apology cannot buy back 3 years of my life. I accept the truth, but I cannot come back. I will maintain minimal contact on my terms." I had established the coldest boundary to protect my heart from being hurt again. A month passed. My parents respected the boundary. I started therapy. I am learning to process the anger. I realized the ring incident was just the climax of accumulated trauma. I was promoted. My career is living proof of my self-worth. Qley still texts, pleading. I respond with silence. I am building my new family, Ryan and new friends who trust me unconditionally. I found my self-worth, not through my family's approval, but through my independence. 6 months later, I made a decision. I'm moving to another city, taking a higher management role. This is a completely new start, a chance to define myself. Qley reacted violently. She came to me unannounced, pleading. She was afraid of losing me, but she had already lost me 3 years ago. I told her, this is what I have to do for myself. I need to be free. I am trying to forgive them, not because they deserve it, but because I need peace. Forgiveness does not mean forgetting. I will maintain minimal contact. Whatever the future holds, I know I will be okay. I have won back my life.